Welcome back, fellow exiles. Today, I'm going to be breaking down every currency generating mechanic in the end game of Path of Exile 2 and sharing with you my tier list on which mechanics I think you should be spending your valuable time on. Before we start, here is an obvious disclaimer. This tier list will be based off of my opinions on each strategy and will reflect my experiences throughout the game. I have played Path of Exile 2 for around 600 hours at this point and generated hundreds of divine orbs. So anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into it. All right, the first strategy up is Delirium, which is easily getting placed into the insane tier. Delirium is by far the most important mechanic to get points into as soon as possible. Completing 3 simulacrums will give you access to 3 very important Delirium notables. A 20% chance for waystones you pick up to have a random amount of distilled emotions already instilled onto them, potentially giving them very large amounts of deliriousness. The second notable literally just doubles the amount of splinters that drop. And the third, you'll spawn 50% more fracturing mirrors inside your delirious encounters, which will cause more delirious monsters to spawn, which equals more splinters. The best part about getting Delirium done first is that you will begin to stockpile Delirious Waystones by just picking them up off the ground. And these Waystones require 0 setup on the Atlas to get maximum effectiveness, because the only way to scale getting more Simulacrum Splinters is by increasing the amount of Deliriousness on the Waystone. So you can just use Delirious Waystones on top of literally any other mapping mechanic you're choosing to play, and it will literally just add an additional layer of profit on top of whatever else it is you are doing. Essence in its current state is just complete trash. There's a few profound issues with them at the moment. First off, greater essences basically never appear. In my 600 hours of gameplay, I have only found 5 of them. And when they do, they aren't really that useful for the majority of players when it comes to crafting gear. If you start with a perfect white base, essences will give you 2 somewhat deterministic crafts, although they are going to be at a random tier. Then, even after using your greater essence, you're still going to have to exalt slam and likely brick your item. Now there are a couple niche cases where greater essences are usable, like profit crafting breach rings with mana or attributes, but in general, these things are completely useless to the majority of the player base. I would like to see the drop rate of greater essences increased, and GGG should also make greater essences completely re-roll your item like they did in PoE 1. The Trials of Sekhema is not quite as profitable as it was at the start of early access, but it can still be farmed repetitively to make a decent profit. It requires some setup in the form of either collecting or purchasing a good combination of relics. Your character will need to be capable of finishing the entirety of the trial, killing all 4 bosses, and you will be farming for jewels and relics, which require some game knowledge to decipher which ones are valuable or not. You can also sell the final boss kill as a carry service to players who still need their final ascendancy points. I think Trials of Sekhema is in a good spot right now, but you'll definitely want to consider this as a very viable strat at the start of the next economy reset, when all the prices of jewels are in higher demand. Ritual is a very viable strategy, although it does have some flaws. In its current state, it does require the largest buy-in price out of all of the mechanics to get fully operational. You need to have killed the King of the Mist 3 times before you can really lean into farming rituals. With your 6 points of ritual passives, you get 1 extra reroll, 50% increased chance to find omens, and a 50% increased chance to find an audience with the king. Once you have that out of the way, Ritual is a great mechanic to farm large ticket items like audience with the king or purple omens. It'll have low lows and very high highs. So if you stick to it over a large amount of maps, you will make tons of currency. Pinnacle Bossing is insane but risky. This strat includes repetitively killing any of the pinnacle bosses in the end game. It's risky because you're going to be betting the price of your boss fight token against the odds of something valuable dropping from the boss. In most cases, you will make a very large amount of currency farming pinnacle bosses over a long period of time, but it isn't guaranteed since it is RNG based. And it's also completely possible that you go bankrupt using this strategy if you don't have enough currency to keep on betting until you finally hit big. Hunting arbiter fragments from citadels is mid-viable. You can make a good amount of currency with this strategy, but I don't think it's worth it as a main strat because it requires lots of traversal and setup. You'll be hunting down citadels, which is much easier after the most recent 0.1.1 patch, and then you'll traverse around the citadel to all the towers within range and use tablets in them that increase waystone drop chance. After all the towers are juicing your citadel map, you will use a waystone with a massive waystone drop chance modifier on it, something like 500%, and this should land you 3 to 4 arbiter fragments once you kill the map boss. Expedition is a very viable strategy, even though half the mechanic is pretty much useless unless you're playing SSF. The best way to generate currency using Expedition is to farm the map mechanic where you are placing bombs on top of remnants, flags, and chests, target farming for level 79 or higher Expedition logbooks, which will sell for around half a divine orb in bulk on the trade website. Another great thing to mention about this strategy is that unlike some of the other league mechanics, it is not mandatory for you to start off with points already invested into the Expedition Atlas passive tree to take full advantage of this strat. The Atlas passives help, but they aren't insanely broken. You can still expect to make a decent profit without them. Profit crafting is an insane but risky rabbit hole that you can jump into. Generally, this would involve buying or farming white normal versions of the best items in the game, and then using deterministic crafting methods to turn them into best in slot end game items. I don't really recommend this as a strategy, but it is widely used and can make you a ton of currency. I personally don't do any profit crafting, and I have made hundreds of divines this league. But I can't deny the fact that this strat has made many people insane amounts of profit. That being said, it's also caused many people to go bankrupt. If you want to learn how to profit craft, I highly recommend checking out this guy Belton. He's a legend in the community and can teach you the ins and outs of the strategy better than anyone. And next up is Strongboxes. In their current state, they are absolute massive piles of complete trash. You aren't ever going to be getting anything worthwhile to drop from these, and they are just massive wastes of your time. I'd like to see GGG add some unique chase items that only drop from strong boxes, and then maybe that would increase their viability. Trials of Chaos is a very viable strategy to farming currency. My Trials of Chaos video is kind of what caused my channel to blow up, and since the creation of that video, this strategy has actually only gotten better and better as the price of soul cores has increased. The best part of this strat is that since you're primarily target farming for soul cores and trial master key fragments, you will make all of your profits at the currency exchange. So if you are a newer player and pricing items is difficult for you, this is the perfect strategy to take advantage of. This may come as a surprise to many people, but I only believe Breach to be a mid-viable farming strategy. It's by far the most common mechanic in the game because of how easy it is to get into, and for many people, it's also the most enjoyable due to the crazy pack size of the Breach monsters you will be killing. But because of that, there is a massive supply of Breach splinters and catalysts on the market, and that lowers their price. Also, this strategy requires you to juice the section of the Atlas you are farming breaches in by traversing to nearby towers first and using either breach, item quant, item rarity, or pack size tablets, which in my opinion is not a particularly enjoyable experience. On top of that, you'll also be spending at least half of the time in each of these maps just going around picking up stackable bubblegum currency up off the ground. If you're going to farm breach, you really should consider comboing it with Delirium to make it worth your while. Please, GGG, can you make all of the breach specific loot drop the same way as the Delirium specific loot drops after a Delirium mirror? Please. Now, with the tier list completed, I want to share with you what my favorite strategy is to generating currency. It combines many mechanics into one strategy to keep the game feeling fresh instead of spamming the same thing over and over. I have a stockpile of Delirious Waystones tier 12 or higher that I have picked up off the ground with ideal amounts of deliriousness, like 50% or higher. If I ever have to use a distilled emotion to finish filling out a Delirious Waystone I picked up, or if I run out of them and have to create my own from scratch, I will use 1 to 3 distilled despairs because they add 20% deliriousness each and can be purchased at a reasonable price from the currency exchange. I then traverse towards citadels, not to focus them, but just to give me a general direction to head towards. I'll hit every single tower on my way towards the citadel, maybe even stopping in certain areas if there are 3 or more towers overlapping each other, creating a nice section of maps to juice up. In my towers, I will use tablets that add rituals, expeditions, and item quantity. This way, the maps I am farming will give me guaranteed profit in the form of simulacrum splinters, and then I will also have a chance at looting expedition logbooks, audience with the kings, and purple omens. Delirium also works particularly well with ritual because the delirious monsters will get sucked into your ritual altars and give you more tribute. Also, just a reminder, purple omens only drop from level 80 or higher rituals, and level 79 or higher logbooks only drop from level 79 or higher zones. So make sure to use your highest level waystones when doing these mechanics and use the lower waystones for empty traversal maps or towers. For a while, I was selling all of my audience with the kings and logbooks, but now that I have finished scaling my character's power and can afford to risk the currency, I run all of my boss fights. This has turned out to be an extremely profitable strategy for me. If you're looking for something to try out, then I highly recommend giving this a go. I'd also love to hear about your guys' strategies as well, so let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching my first tier list video. I hope I was able to help some of you decide how you want to spend your time playing the end game of Path of Exile 2. If you found this video particularly helpful, then I'd really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up and like the video. And as always, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on what I'm cooking up next. Peace.